In the infinite canvas of the galaxy, some worlds remain untouched, guarded by forces beyond comprehension. Zarath Prime, a planet that defied conquest for millennia, stood as a grim reminder that even the mightiest civilizations have their limits. But when human footprints impossibly preserved were discovered on its untamed surface, the galaxy's collective understanding of the impossible began to shatter. What secrets did this unconquerable world hide? And how could humanity have left its mark on a place no one could survive? Zarath Prime loomed in the void like an ominous beacon, its surface cloaked in perpetual storms and jagged terrain that defied explanation. It was a world that tantalized explorers and scientists across the galaxy, yet none could conquer its mysteries. Every attempt to land had ended in failure. Ships disintegrated in the atmosphere, probes vanished without a trace, and even the most advanced AI systems failed to decipher the planet's bizarre anomalies. Theories abounded, some called it cursed. Others speculated it was a natural fortress, while a few whispered that it was alive. Whatever the truth, Zarath Prime had become a graveyard of ambition and hubris. The Galactic Consortium labeled it a Class Omega hazard, marking it as a place of extreme danger. Expeditions had been banned, yet Zarath Prime's reputation continued to draw the brave, the desperate, and the foolish. Its unyielding nature became a symbol of ultimate defiance, a challenge waiting for the right species to overcome. Among the galaxy's countless worlds, Zarath Prime remained unconquered, a stark reminder of the universe's untamed chaos. When the Consortium's long-range probe, Astralis 7, detected human footprints on Zarath Prime, the galaxy collectively held its breath. At first, the signal was dismissed as a glitch. Human exploration had barely begun to scratch the surface of their own solar system when Zarath Prime was first discovered, let alone a planet this far removed. Yet, when the probe's visual feed was analyzed, the impossible became undeniable. The images were clear. Scattered across a barren plateau on the planet's southern hemisphere were unmistakable footprints, preserved as if etched into the surface itself. The prints weren't random, they formed deliberate paths weaving through the terrain in a way that suggested purpose. Detailed analysis revealed the wear patterns of ancient human boots, a design that matched Earth's early 21st century exploration equipment. The revelation sent shockwaves through the scientific and political communities. How could humans have reached Zarath Prime? The planet had been deemed unreachable even by civilizations millennia ahead of Earth in technological prowess. Moreover, how had the footprints endured the planet's violent winds and corrosive atmosphere? Questions multiplied, each more baffling than the last. The consortium convened an emergency summit, bringing together the galaxy's foremost experts in xenology, planetary science, and archaeology. Some theorized that the footprints were fabrications, perhaps the remnants of an advanced alien simulation designed to mimic human activity. Others proposed time travel, speculating that humans from a distant future had mastered the secrets of Zarath Prime. No theory satisfied every question, and no one could agree on a course of action. What was clear, however, was that Zarath Prime had once again defied understanding. Its secrets had remained hidden for eons, but now it offered a tantalizing glimpse of something far greater. The footprints weren't just evidence of human presence, they were a challenge, an enigma that demanded answers. The galaxy prepared to confront the forbidden world, unaware that the answers they sought could unravel everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the cosmos. The discovery of human footprints on Zarath Prime set the galaxy ablaze with curiosity and urgency. The Galactic Consortium wasted no time assembling an elite team to investigate. Drawn from the brightest minds and most daring explorers, the group represented the culmination of interstellar expertise. Their mission was simple in definition but perilous in execution: descend to Zarath Prime, retrieve evidence of human presence, and unravel the enigma of the impossible footprints. The fleet tasked with this mission was unprecedented in scale and sophistication. Leading the effort was the Eidolon, a state-of-the-art research vessel outfitted with the most advanced technology known to the galaxy. Shielded by energy fields designed to repel Zarath Prime's ferocious storms and equipped with experimental propulsion systems to counter its gravitational anomalies, the Eidolon was humanity's best chance to solve the mystery. As the ship approached Zarath Prime, the sense of anticipation aboard was palpable. The planet dominated their viewports, a swirling mass of black storms and crimson landmasses that seemed alive in their chaos. Despite decades of observation, the planet remained an anomaly. Its surface was an uncharted labyrinth of jagged mountains, steaming chasms, and lakes of unknown liquid. The atmosphere shimmered with electromagnetic activity so intense that even remote scans struggled to pierce its veil. The descent team prepared meticulously. Their suits were reinforced with alloys resistant to extreme corrosion, their gear calibrated to endure atmospheric turbulence, and their minds steeled against the unknown. But as they approached the planet's upper atmosphere, Zarath Prime's infamous hostility made itself known. The first wave of electromagnetic pulses struck the Eidolon like an unrelenting tide, disrupting key systems and scrambling long-range communications. Instruments that had performed flawlessly in simulations faltered under the onslaught, rendering half the team's data feeds unreliable. Gravity fluctuations battered the ship, forcing the pilots to make constant adjustments to maintain stability. The planet seemed to resist their very presence, as if it were aware of their intrusion. Navigating through the chaos, the Eidolon reached a stable orbit, though the cost in energy and resources was staggering. From this precarious position, the team launched a smaller shuttle to the surface. The craft, equipped with redundant systems and experimental shielding, sliced through the atmosphere with the precision of a scalpel. Yet, as the shuttle neared the surface, the resistance intensified. Wind shear threatened to tear the vessel apart, while electrical surges danced along its hull like living things. The descent was a battle against nature itself, each second stretching into an eternity. Finally, with a jarring impact that rattled every nerve, the shuttle landed on a rocky plateau a mere kilometer from the site of the mysterious footprints. As the crew stepped onto Zarath Prime's surface, a wave of oppressive heat and static washed over them. The terrain beneath their boots felt unnaturally firm, almost metallic in its resilience. Ahead of them, the human footprints lay stark and unyielding, as if mocking the planet's hostility. The journey had just begun, but already Zarath Prime's mysteries were proving far greater than anyone had anticipated. The shuttle's engines powered down, leaving an eerie silence punctuated only by the distant rumble of storms circling the horizon. Zarath Prime was alive with hostility, its chaotic energy palpable, even through the team's reinforced suits. The planet's surface was unlike anything they had prepared for. Jagged black rocks glistened as though wet but proved dry and sharp to the touch. The sky above churned with electric storms that illuminated the landscape in bursts of crimson and violet. It was a world that felt fundamentally opposed to life, yet the human footprints persisted, impossibly intact in the midst of this chaos. The team's instruments struggled to function. Atmospheric sensors provided conflicting readings, temperatures fluctuated wildly, and every step seemed to distort their gravimetric data. Yet the footprints ahead remained unnervingly consistent, perfectly defined impressions in the soil, leading deeper into the unknown. Despite the planet's winds whipping around them, the footprints were untouched, as though protected by an unseen force. Each member of the team felt the weight of the moment. Zarath Prime was no ordinary world, and these were no ordinary tracks. The path they followed cut through the jagged terrain, weaving between spires of obsidian-like rock that rose from the ground like the broken teeth of some colossal predator. Strange, crystalline growths jutted from the rocks, catching the fleeting light and refracting it in spectral colors. As they advanced, the environment began to shift in unsettling ways. What initially appeared to be solid ground occasionally pulsed beneath their feet, faint vibrations reverberating through the soles of their boots. Plants that resembled twisted vines hung limply until approached, then retracted into the ground as though retreating from their presence. The air grew denser, almost liquid in its pressure, and their suits' filtration systems strained to keep up. It wasn't long before they entered a dense, forested area. The trees were unlike anything cataloged, a mixture of organic and crystalline structures, their bark emitting a faint hum. Leaves with sharp, geometric patterns rustled not with the wind but seemingly of their own accord. The atmosphere here was heavier, as if the forest itself were aware of their intrusion. The footprints led them deeper still, winding through the crystalline undergrowth. Then they stopped abruptly at the edge of a wide, shimmering lake. The water's surface reflected not just the stormy skies above, but something else: faint, distorted images of humanoid figures moving in the opposite direction of the team's movements. The figures were faint but distinct, clad in primitive human garb, carrying tools that looked like relics of Earth's early industrial era. The team paused, uneasy. The reflections in the lake continued to move independent of their actions. It was as though the water showed an echo of the past, or perhaps a version of reality that was never meant to be seen. A sudden, low tremor shook the ground, and the reflections vanished, leaving only the unbroken expanse of dark water. The silence was suffocating. Each step forward felt like a violation, yet the path compelled them onward. They couldn't know it yet, but Zarath Prime was watching, and it was not pleased. The shimmering lake stretched endlessly before the team, its surface unnervingly still despite the raging storms above. The footprints they had followed so far ended abruptly at the water's edge, as if their creator had stepped into the liquid and vanished. Yet the lake itself was no ordinary body of water. Its surface mirrored more than the world around it. It reflected something unnatural, something watching. When the team tried to scan it, their instruments failed, registering only blank voids or indecipherable static. The team pressed closer, peering into the lake's depths. Though calm on the surface, faint pulses of light occasionally flickered from below, illuminating shapes that seemed impossibly distant, as if the lake stretched far deeper than its shallow banks suggested. Then came the first shadow, something vast and serpentine, gliding silently beneath the water. It moved too quickly to track, disappearing as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving the observers unsettled. Around the lake, the environment grew even stranger. The crystalline trees emitted faint sounds, hollow, rhythmic tones that resembled whispers in a language none of them could comprehend. The wind, which had been erratic and violent, now moved in deliberate, spiraling currents as if responding to their presence. The planet was no longer passively hostile. It felt as though it were actively studying them, reacting to their every step. Suddenly, a tremor shook the ground, sending ripples across the lake. One of the team members stumbled, their footing compromised as the soil beneath their boots momentarily softened. They regained balance, but not before noticing a series of shapes flickering at the edge of the forest. These shapes were humanoid, but incomplete, like silhouettes composed of smoke and static, barely holding form. They lingered for only a moment before vanishing, leaving the team with a gnawing sense of being watched. The first tragedy struck without warning. A second, stronger tremor caused the ground near the lake's edge to split open, revealing a chasm that extended into infinite darkness. One scientist, positioned too close to the rift, lost their footing and fell. There was no scream, no echo of impact, only silence as the void swallowed them. Panic rippled through the team. But they knew retreat wasn't an option. They gathered their resolve and continued to examine the area, desperate to find something that could explain the footprints or the bizarre phenomena around them. The lake began to shimmer more intensely, as if responding to their presence. Patterns of light formed on its surface, swirling into shapes that resembled maps, constellations, and symbols no one recognized. The forest's strange watchers returned, no longer flickering but standing solidly at the tree line. They didn't move closer but remained still, their glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. The figures' forms were jagged and inhuman, yet there was an undeniable intelligence in their gaze. The team, overwhelmed by the increasing intensity of the planet's reaction, decided to move away from the lake, hoping to escape the ominous watchers. But as they turned, the path behind them was gone, replaced by an impenetrable thicket of crystalline vines. Zarath Prime had closed the door, trapping them within its labyrinth, as though the planet itself had decided they had seen too much. The towering structure emerged from the dense forest like a monolith of impossible design, its surface glimmering faintly under the storm-lit sky. Unlike the jagged, chaotic terrain around it, this edifice bore a calculated geometry, its lines sharp and precise. It seemed at odds with the natural hostility of Zarath Prime, as though constructed by a force that had subdued the planet's wrath, if only temporarily. The team approached cautiously, their sensors failing to categorize the material of its walls. It was neither metallic nor organic, yet it radiated an energy that resonated through their suits. Carvings adorned its surface, spiraling upward in intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. Upon closer inspection, these carvings depicted humanoid figures engaged in conflict with monstrous shapes, creatures unlike anything recorded in galactic databases. At the base of the structure, a large circular entrance beckoned, its edges glowing faintly with the same light as the carvings. The footprints they had followed led directly to this threshold, their final step disappearing into the structure itself. The team hesitated. Whatever lay within was no longer a mystery, it was a confrontation with the unknown. Steeling themselves, they stepped through the portal and into the structure's interior. The space inside defied logic. The walls shimmered with the same shifting carvings, and the floor was smooth and reflective, giving the unsettling impression that they were walking on liquid mercury. The air was thick yet breathable, filled with a faint hum that seemed to echo their movements. At the center of the chamber, on a raised pedestal, sat an artifact. It pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light, like a heartbeat. Its shape was irregular, a mass of interlocking segments that seemed to rearrange themselves with each pulse. Symbols danced across its surface, glowing briefly before fading into the metallic sheen. Despite its alien appearance, something about it felt familiar, as though it resonated on a level beyond comprehension. The team's instruments registered an extraordinary energy field emanating from the artifact. The readings were unlike anything they had encountered, simultaneously mechanical and organic, as if the artifact were alive. It radiated a sense of purpose, as though it existed not as a relic but as a sentinel, waiting for something or someone to activate it. As they moved closer, the artifact responded. The light within it intensified, and the carvings on the walls began to move, depicting scenes of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Human figures appeared prominently in these visions, their forms etched in defiance against overwhelming odds. It was a story of struggle and triumph, a narrative that spanned eons. Suddenly, the artifact emitted a low vibration that rattled the chamber. The energy field around it expanded, engulfing the team in a wave of light. In that moment, a flood of images overwhelmed their minds, memories of battles fought on impossible worlds, of ancient enemies locked away in forgotten prisons, and of humanity standing at the center of it all. Before they could process what they had seen, the ground trembled violently. The carvings on the walls now depicted something emerging, something vast and ominous. Outside, the storm intensified, and a deafening roar echoed through the forest. The artifact pulsed once more, as if issuing a warning. Whatever secrets it held were not meant to be disturbed, but it was too late. The team had set something into motion, something far greater than they could understand. The tremors beneath the surface of Zarath Prime grew into a violent quake, shaking the monolithic structure to its core. Dust and shards of crystalline material rained from the ceiling as the artifact pulsed with increasing intensity, each wave of energy stronger than the last. The team scrambled to steady themselves, their boots sliding on the reflective floor. Outside the structure, the storm surged to a ferocity beyond anything recorded, as if the planet itself was in upheaval. As the artifact's energy field expanded, its light began to coalesce into patterns above the pedestal. A three-dimensional projection emerged, its shape a spiraling web of interconnected points, resembling a star map. At its center was a glowing orb, unmistakably depicting Earth. The surrounding points connected to Earth through lines of energy, forming pathways that stretched across the galaxy. It was a map of something ancient, a network that seemed to bind humanity's destiny to the stars. The images in the walls began to shift violently. The calm, deliberate carvings now transformed into scenes of chaos. Figures resembling humans were shown locked in battle against towering, shadowy forms, their faces indistinct but their power undeniable. These creatures emanated a presence of pure malice, depicted as tearing apart worlds with claws and energy that seemed to ripple off the walls themselves. Yet amidst the destruction, the carvings highlighted humanity's defiance, a thread of light cutting through the darkness. Then, the artifact emitted a low, resonant hum, and the walls around them began to project moving images. These weren't just depictions, they were glimpses into events that had long passed. A vast fleet of ships, crewed by modern standards, descended on Zarath Prime in an era long forgotten. The humans in the fleet looked outmatched, wielding primitive technology against forces that seemed godlike. Yet they fought with a tenacity that defied the odds, culminating in a final act of defiance: the activation of the artifact. The energy it unleashed obliterated their enemies, sealing away something monstrous within the planet itself. The projection lingered on the scene of the victorious humans, leaving their mark, those very footprints that now brought the team here. But the victory came with a price. The artifact's final act bound Zarath Prime in a state of perpetual resistance, a guardian to ensure no one could disturb what was buried beneath its surface. Suddenly, the artifact's light dimmed and the projection faded, leaving the team in a silence heavy with revelation. Zarath Prime wasn't just an unconquerable planet, it was a prison. The humans who had left their mark here were not explorers but wardens, charged with keeping something far older and more dangerous contained. The team now understood the footprints weren't merely a curiosity, they were a warning. The silence was shattered by a deafening crack from the ground below. The artifact's pulses became erratic, and the tremors intensified. Outside, a massive fissure opened in the earth, splitting the forest apart. From its depths rose a shadow, vast and formless, coiling into the storm-filled sky. The watchers at the edge of the forest were gone, replaced by a suffocating presence that seemed to ripple through reality itself. The artifact flashed one final time, sending out a shockwave that knocked the team off their feet. As they struggled to recover, the carvings on the walls began to disintegrate, their stories erased as though Zarath Prime was retracting its revelations. The artifact's energy was waning, its purpose fulfilled, or perhaps its power exhausted. The team was left with a terrifying realization: whatever the humans of the past had locked away, it was no longer dormant. It was awake, and it was rising. The ground beneath the team shuddered with a relentless fury, as if Zarath Prime itself were coming apart. The fissure that had opened outside the structure now stretched for kilometers, spewing clouds of ash and glowing fragments into the storm-filled sky. From its depths, the shadow that had risen continued to unfurl, its form shifting between shapes that defied comprehension. It wasn't just vast, it was wrong, a living void that seemed to consume light and logic alike. The artifact at the center of the chamber dimmed, its once rhythmic pulses now erratic and faint. Whatever power it had wielded to bind this entity was failing. The team could feel it in the air, a suffocating weight pressing against their suits, an unnatural pressure that thrummed in their skulls. Air equipment registered wild fluctuations in energy, gravity, and even time itself. It was as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling in the presence of this being. Desperation took hold. The team scoured the chamber for answers, for some mechanism to reawaken the artifact's containment field. But the walls, once vibrant with moving images and symbols, were now inert and crumbling. The structure itself seemed to be dying, its purpose fulfilled and its power spent. The only clue that remained was the star map projection, still faintly glowing in the air above the artifact. The map shifted, zooming in on Earth. A single line of energy connected Zarath Prime to humanity's homeworld, pulsing faintly like a dying heartbeat. It was a message, or perhaps a command: whatever was awakening here was tied to Earth, and the link had to be severed. The team realized the implications with chilling clarity. Humanity had been the wardens of this prison, and their connection to Zarath Prime was the lock. If the lock remained open, the entity would find its way to Earth, and from there to the galaxy beyond. The shadow outside began to take form, coalescing into a towering figure that loomed over the landscape. It radiated an intelligence that was ancient and predatory, its presence an affront to every instinct the team possessed. It wasn't merely alive, it was hunger incarnate, a force that devoured not just matter but meaning. The storms around it bent to its will, their chaotic patterns now swirling in deliberate, ominous spirals. As the team struggled to act, the artifact emitted one final pulse, projecting a stream of data directly into their minds. It was a blueprint, a set of instructions, but the complexity of it was staggering. They didn't need to understand it completely, they only needed to act. The blueprint directed them to interface with the artifact, to rechannel its failing energy into a single catastrophic burst. It wouldn't destroy the entity, but it might sever the connection between Zarath Prime and Earth, closing the prison once and for all. With no time to hesitate, the team worked frantically, following the instructions etched into their minds. The artifact flared weakly in response to their efforts, its energy sputtering like a dying star. Outside, the shadow began to move toward the structure, its vast limbs dissolving and reforming with each step. It knew what they were doing, and it would not allow them to succeed. The chamber began to collapse as the structure failed, but the team persisted. At last, the artifact surged with one final pulse, its light blinding and all-consuming. The energy it released ripped through the chamber, through the fissure, and into the shadow itself. For a moment, the entity froze, its form writhing as the energy severed its connection to Earth. The team barely escaped as the structure imploded, the artifact's energy detonating in a wave that sealed the fissure and pushed the entity back into the depths of the planet. The storm subsided, and the oppressive weight lifted, but the cost was clear. Zarath Prime had been scarred by the battle, and whatever remained of the artifact's power was now gone. As their shuttle ascended, the team looked back at the planet, its surface once again cloaked in its impenetrable storms. Zarath Prime's purpose as a prison remained intact, but the danger was not over. The connection to Earth had been severed, but for how long? The entity had awakened, and it now knew of humanity. Somewhere in the void it would wait, and it would watch. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Sci-Fi Horizon's stories for more thrilling tales of science fiction and adventure.